your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And this week we have a very exciting topic we want to cover with you. It is called prison horror. And Matt, I know you have some thoughts on this topic, a real favorite of yours.
It is. One of my favorite ideas of the topics is something that you had brought up originally when we first came up with this idea for this podcast, where you were saying that a prison can be a thing that like an individual or groups of people go to, and that can be a horrific thing, but it also can be like something in your mind. So it can either be something that someone goes to or something that someone goes to in their mind, but it can also be a state of being that they're in. So it doesn't actually have to be an actual prison. It doesn't have to be an actual prisoner, and it could be like they were taken captive, or even to the point psychologically where they were, they're taken captive in their mind and they live in a prison in their own mind. And so I think that gives a lot of room for defining what it means to be a prison horror movie, and I think that's why it's such an interesting topic this week.
Yeah, I agree. It's in real world horrors, it's got to be, your loss of freedom, your loss of independence, your loss of identity, the oppression of being locked up and controlled.
Loss of hope.
It's got to be as scary as Freddy or Jason or anything else.
Well, it could be scarier because when you're running from Jason, you have hope in front of you. There's somewhere that you're going that's away from him. But when you're in a prison, there's no escape. There's no one coming for you. There's no hope, especially when you're taken against your will.
Sure.
So a lot of these movies, a lot of these prison movies, to me, they exemplify the most horrific situation that a person could be in.
Sure. Well, the two movies we selected for you this week that we're going to cover, the first of which is Oldboy from 2003, directed by Park Chan-wook. And I know this is a personal favorite of yours, and I know it is of mine.
Yep.
Great film. We start by meeting, and you can't call him our hero. You can call him our main character.
Right.
But we meet Oldboy, who is a drunken fool. We see him being arrested. He's just completely belligerent, obnoxious. He is the kind of person, if you met out at a bar, everybody would want to deck him. He's just awful person. And on the night we meet him, we find out it was his daughter's birthday that he missed because he was out being a drunken fool. His good friend, Ju Huan, picks him up at the police station. Even on his way out, he's being belligerent to the police and just an obnoxious individual.
He makes looking drunk look like a horrible time.
Right. He goes and calls his daughter to wish her happy birthday, even though he missed her birthday. It's late at night. We don't know the time, but she's sleeping. And he's just making an ass of himself to the point where Ju Huan has to get on the phone to try and apologize for his actions. And while he's on the phone, Oldboy has staggered out into a rainy, dark street, and it disappears. And that's how we enter into our story of him being locked up. The next shot we have of him is being fed through a dog door in what looks like a converted hotel room. He's imprisoned. He doesn't know why. He doesn't know by who. He doesn't know for what. And that leads the intrigue of the story.
Yeah, it's like a dropping a rat in a snake's cage. He's just running around he's just looking what's going on. Panic.
He tries climbing out the dog door. He tries grabbing,
he's putting his hand through it and everything. He's scratching at the door. He's maniac.
He's beside himself with anger and confusion and frustration, as any of us would be.
And it's relatable. You're like, yeah, I get it.
We find out the prison, they're watching him at all times. Occasionally they play some music and drop some gas into the room to knock him out, and they'll go in and cut his hair and perform hygiene functions. And clean up his room and
keeping him alive throughout the entire process. Yeah, they want him kept alive and healthy, and yep, they're making sure he gets his vitamins and he's has hygiene. Yep, they're not letting him slip away. So they're preserving him.
Yes, there's no escape. 1 year in, he does have a television and he watches a lot of television. And 1 year in, the first kind of shoe drops that he watches on the news, and his wife has been murdered. And the only clue is a cup that had been removed from his room that was left at her residence when she was killed with his fingerprints on it. Mm-hmm. So he's been missing for a year, and now would be a suspect or the primary suspect in his wife's murder. So they're just throwing one seed after another at this man for some reason.
Yeah. They're just adding on the layers of psychological horror.
You mentioned it. He goes a little bit mad from his isolation. He has hallucinations. He does try to kill himself, but they won't allow it. As soon as he tries to do anything harmful, they knock him out. They come in and they fix him up. Yeah. There's no escape from what they have intended for him. And this whole time we're on this journey with him, and we don't know why any more than he does, which is kind of cool and has you on the edge of your seat.
Like, why are they torturing this guy? Yeah.
Who, what, why? It's a lot of movies you already know the narrative, and this you're just guy's thrown in prison. You don't know why, and you discover with him, which is kind of
exciting. It's like one clue at a time. Yeah, very L.A. Noirish. Very a lot of clues along the way, breadcrumbs.
Every day he is delivered. He gets not egg rolls.
Dumplings. Yeah.
Dumplings, excuse me. Thank you. Yeah. He gets dumplings delivered every day. One day he gets an extra chopstick, and he has kind of a humorous line. His first thought is that somewhere somebody only got one chopstick. But because he got three, he keeps the extra, and he uses it to start digging a hole through the cinder block.
Yeah.
A weird twist to me is that he never actually gets anywhere. It's not like he digs himself out like Escape from Alcatraz. Like you think this is going somewhere.
Yeah, he's gonna do it,
and it doesn't really go anywhere. He gets a hole and he comes through and he finds out he's way up on the high story of a building, and it really doesn't play into the ultimate story in any way.
So it's just another psychological form of torture or prank or it's just irony. It's just another form of this torturous irony. Like he's not getting anywhere with it. Yeah. Like the movie leads you into thinking he is, but he's not. And like that's part of his fate too. It's like he got nowhere. All of this hope was just abandoned.
Yeah. Pull the rug out from under him.
Yeah.
The one thing he does do is he calms down a little bit and he decides to put his focus on when he gets out and he starts training to fight. He's fighting the wall. He's punching the cinder blocks, but he's watching fighting videos, watching exercise videos, and he decides he's going to get in shape so that when the day ever comes that he can enact his vengeance, he can do so. So that's his really only activity is watching TV, fighting the walls, and exercising.
Yeah.
When he
Al Gore to life.
He looks like a different individual. Like a completely different person, 15 years in. Mm-hmm. But it turns out 15 years was his sentence, because at the 15-year mark, he's gassed, he's hypnotized, and the next thing we know, he's in a grassy field, or so it appears, inside of a suitcase,
right? Which
has very weird visuals to it.
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned, we were talking about this. It really objectifies him. It kind of removes his humanity and makes him, he's just an object packed up like anything else.
Yep, just like an object being transferred out, because you could have transferred him any way you wanted to out into that field, and they chose a suitcase. And I thought that was just it was brilliant, because if you're going to objectify someone, that's what someone would put. Like what Dahmer put dead bodies in. You know what I mean? Like you just suitcase. Yeah.
The other thing I like about that scene is the camera's zoomed in on a suitcase, and all you can see is the grass around it.
Yeah.
And you make you think he's in a grassy field somewhere, and as they pull out, you discover he's actually on a rooftop that has grass, but it kind of changes the whole dynamic of where he is and the situation.
Which is actually really poetic to the movie, because that's what they're constantly doing. Like going back to the chopstick, you think you're going to get out, you think there's hope, and it's just you just abandon that thought immediately because there's another realm of reality that's going on. You know, he gets the chopstick, he thinks he's going to break out. Nope. He gets outside, he thinks he's in a field. Nope, you're not in a field. You're in a building. Like it just constantly does that throughout the entire movie. It's actually part of the brilliance of the movie, the way it's narrated.
You could really say the theme of this movie is nothing is what it seems.
Right. Right.
And they play that out continually.
Yeah, just a continuous a multi-dimensional prism, a multi-dimensional prison.
He has a interesting interaction when he gets out of the suitcase. He's wearing a full suit. He has a nice watch on. He's completely dressed. And he has an interaction with an individual on the top of this building who's there with his dog and appears to want to jump off the building. And Odesu has had such lack of human interaction for 15 years. He can't do anything but touch the guy and just wants to know he's real and that he's another live human. And he saves him from falling by grabbing his tie. And then they have a discussion about, even though I'm a beast, I am worthy of life. And this meta philosophical big picture discussion that comes from a strange place from this guy getting out of prison for 15 years. It's a nice interaction. I always wondered if a dog lover wanted to jump off a building, would they take their dog with them? It seems false to me, right? That does not
I don't
seem
know.
How that would
those
go.
Maltese dog owners are something else, man. I've always questioned about them anyway. So,
so he leaves. It goes off the top of the building, down the elevator, and he thinks he's saved this man's life.
Yeah.
Right. And as he comes down the elevator, he grabs sunglasses off a woman.
Yeah.
And just starts walking, and she's frantic, calling his name, and the next thing
talking to the security guard. Yeah.
Behind him, the man and the dog drop down onto a car.
Yeah.
Just crash.
Yeah.
Whatever hesitancy he created in this individual didn't last very long. Yeah. He went anyways. And the interesting part to me was, even though Odesu was anxious to touch this individual and have this human interaction, as he's walking away with the sunglasses on, the body crashes behind him. He doesn't turn, he doesn't miss a step. He's just completely oblivious to it.
Which is funny, because right before, when he was on the roof talking to him, he tells the story, and then the guy's like, "Great, now it's my turn to tell the story." And Desu's like, "I don't care," and just gets up and walks away. He's like, "I just needed you to hear my story. You can continue doing what you were gonna do." Like,
Right. Well, we see the character traits that he's shown us so far in the movie. He's not a great guy.
Well, he's just got out of jail for 15 years. And so he's kind of got a little bit of a tunnel vision, and he's certainly with his sorrows, that's that's all he had. So yeah, he's going to be a little off his rocker for sure.
Well, the very next thing Desu does is he wants to test out his fighting skills that he's been working on for 15 years.
Yeah.
So he walks into a young gang of thugs, and he takes the cigarette out of one of their mouth and just puts it in his own and waits to see what happens.
Yeah.
And what happens is a fight.
Yeah.
And it turns out, him practicing by punching the wall, he's a pretty good fighter.
Yeah.
He takes some licks, but he ends up overcoming all of the thugs and walking away.
I had to look it up to see if he was a previous fighter, to be honest. He wasn't, but like his skills were really good in the movie. Like he had some good form. There was some good fight scenes in there. I really liked it.
I guess if you practice anything for 15 years with nothing else to do, you should be pretty good, I would think.
Yeah. It shows.
So after this fight, a beggar shows up and gives him a wallet full of money and a flip cell phone and says, "Don't ask me anything. I was just paid to bring this over to you." So he takes the stuff. First thing he wants to do is eat. Understandable, I guess. So he goes into a sushi bar. And in a really famous scene from this movie, young waitress approaches, and he just says, "I want to eat something that's alive."
Yeah.
And the way he says it is very different.
Yeah.
You
It's
can tell by the
carnal.
look on her face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she brings him a live octopus. Says, here it is. This is nice, and says, "I'll bring it in the back to have it sliced and prepared."
Yeah.
He doesn't want it sliced and prepared. He grabs it off the tray, this living, squirming tentacles wrapping around, and just bites into it, and just continues to bite into it. The tentacles are all over his
One's going
head,
up his nose,
in his eyes.
Yeah.
It was a crazy scene.
Deserved an Oscar for that.
and I checked, it was all real. They used 4 octopuses in the scene. And they had to shoot it a few times before they got it exactly correct.
I can imagine.
And when the director was asked if he felt bad for the actor, he says, "No, not really. I felt bad for the octopus, but
no, we're filming a movie here.
He was just doing his job."
Right. He's getting paid for this.
Of all the things you imagine to do in a film, to do it's a crazy scene.
That is, no pun intended. That was one of the hardest scenes to stomach. I was like, oh man, I've watched a lot of horror, man, but I watched that and I'm just like, oh, really?
It's got a dose of realism to it that gives it added weight. Cell phone rings and he answers it, and it's clear that this is his captor communicating with him. They have a brief conversation. He learns nothing, and he immediately passes out in the plate of remaining squirming tentacles, which is, again, we're somewhat in the dark on what exactly is happening here. We find out later, but in a twist, he wakes up in the apartment of the young waitress who was taking care of him. And again, we're scratching our head a little bit at this point, saying, well, that would be an odd reaction. If you're waiting on someone in a restaurant and they pass out, typically you'd call the police, call the ambulance. You wouldn't just bring them to your apartment. We find out later why, but at the time we're saying this doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. There's some kind of play going on here. Yeah.
He's sleeping in her bed, and she is reading the notebooks that he had accumulated while he was imprisoned. He had been writing down his story. He wakes up to her going through the notebooks and kind of has a bit of a fit. He grabs all of his notebooks and brings them, pulls them in, and says, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
Of course, he's confused. He just wakes up in a stranger's apartment also. And her name's Mido, and she has a kind of a funny line. She says, "I'm going to go to use the bathroom, and the lock is broke, but don't try any funny business." So of course we know Dae-soo, and he immediately breaks through the bathroom door and tries funny business right on the toilet. And she thumps him in the head and does something that the gang of thugs couldn't do.
Right.
She knocks him on his ass, and he gets up and walks away. He did not succeed. And then she comes out and sits with him and says, "I will be with you at a time when I'm ready."
Yeah.
And watching this through the first time, you're saying, what's wrong with this girl?
This is demented. Yeah. It's very dark. Yeah. This whole thing's demented.
This guy comes into your restaurant, behaves very strangely,
eats an octopus in front of you,
eats a live octopus, passes out.
We know what she's into.
Yeah. That's what I've been waiting for my whole life. And again, first time through, you're scratching your head going, these people are all crazy.
Right.
Just demented. So that was kind of strange.
Yeah.
She agrees to help him try to track down his daughter. And they do a little computer research. The computer graphics from 2003 are kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
It looks like everything on it looks like a dot matrix printer on the screen.
Yeah. Very AOL 1.0-ish. Yeah.
And she finds out that his daughter was adopted and left the country, and I believe was in Stockholm, Sweden.
Stockholm, Sweden, which to me stuck out because the Stockholm syndrome. and everything that's going on with the prison and being, I just thought it was maybe just the director's way or the writer's way of just kind of putting little nuggets in the movie like that, because I don't know if it has any significance. I just thought it was interesting.
It's just an interesting choice.
Yeah,
it could have been
just a little
anywhere.
nugget. Yeah, they could have put it anywhere.
Anywhere
they
in the
Stockholm.
world.
And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's they're just having fun. They're just kind of throwing stuff in there. Yeah.
Yeah. She then gets a message on her computer from the Lonely Prince in High Tower. And at this point, Sue starts to get a little suspicious. You're talking to people on a computer. Remember, he's been in prison for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So this all seems very suspicious. He's questioning, why am I in your apartment? You're reading my books.
Yeah.
Now you get a message on your computer. I don't know if I can trust you.
Yeah, and he's like, is Monte Cristo there? And she's like, there's no one here by the name of Monte Cristo, right? Which is the man in the high tower that's in that movie. So like they're starting to foreshadow some kind of monitoring that's going on.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's interesting because that's when he gets up. He's like, who are you talking to? And then he walks over to the computer and she's like, I'm just talking to someone I talked to about sushi with on some random chat room. And he's like, well, why would they ask about Monte Cristo? That's kind of weird. What's going on here? And that's when he gets up and decides he's going to leave. He's going to go investigate. Because
he goes back and forth between being suspicious of Mido and using her help and being suspicious and using her help. He kind of goes back and forth a couple times.
Right.
But with the daughter being out of the country, he shifts his focus on, okay, who did this and why? I'm going to put 100% of my focus on why was I in prison? And he decides to try to track down the dumplings that he ate every day for 15 years. And he has a small clue to the origin, but he's missing part of it, right? He's got the is it the Blue Dragon?
The Blue Dragon, yeah. He had a little bit. It was like the Matchbox, finding the Matchbox in the L.A. Noire movie. Like he's like finding the right hotel. Like he has this little piece of paper that says Blue Dragon that came with his food one day. So he knows he's getting dumplings from a place called Blue Dragon. So that's his one clue that he has to go off of.
But apparently there's a bunch of places that have Blue Dragon in the name.
Yeah.
So he sets out on a quest to try them all, and he will definitely recognize the dumpling he ate every day for 15 years. So we see him try and fail and try and fail. And then one day, he's by himself. At this point, he's not with Mido.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the off again moments. He finds the exact dumpling.
Yep.
And immediately, which there's some nice, convenient story here, but he immediately follows a delivery driver who is delivering to the prison.
Yeah.
And all he has with him is a hammer. But that hammer becomes part of another famous scene from the movie. He follows him in, and he gets himself all the way into the warden's office.
Yeah.
It's just him and his hammer, and he wants to make the warden talk, and he wants to know, why was I here? Who put me here? What was this all about? And he starts pulling the warden's teeth with the claw end of the hammer.
Yeah.
And brutal, right? And he doesn't really know anything. He's pulling teeth after teeth after tooth, and finds out the warden doesn't really know anything. He says, I never met the guy. I talked to him over the phone. He wire transferred me the money.
Yeah.
I don't really know anything. While all this is going on, all of the henchmen from the prison are now in the hallway outside waiting to take on O'Day Sue. And this is probably the most famous scene, I think, of the entire movie.
Yeah.
Is a long hallway and this massive fight scene that's done in one take.
Yep.
Right. It's a one continuous camera shot. And it always reminds me of like old 80s side scroll fighting games like Street Fighter and Street such.
Fighter, you're
just running down the road or
just that
but
perfect,
he fights back,
that perfect wide shot. Yeah.
Yeah. And he must be fighting 30 men.
Yeah.
And he's got his hammer,
bats and 2x4s and hammers,
and they're all just smashing each other. At one point, he gets a knife in the back.
Yeah,
which is very they got him down.
It's very metaphorical, that knife in the back. Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
and he gets up and he keeps fighting and unbelievably, he makes it all the way to the end of the hall.
Yeah,
on the elevator, and there's just a line of bodies behind him.
Yeah.
He goes down the elevator and staggers out in the street. with a knife in his back and blood all over him. And a nice, friendly stranger happens upon him and puts him into a cab and sends him to Mido's house.
So convenient.
And we quickly realize that this stranger is not a stranger, but is his captor.
Yeah.
So he's been following him all along and continues to play him, even though he has quote unquote freedom at this point. No, he's not really free.
Right.
So he gets back to Mido's house, and he's all beaten up and bloody, and he accuses her of being against him again. He reaches out to his old friend Zhu Huan for help, who he hasn't seen since that night 15 years ago. And he of course works at an internet cafe, which is convenient because he starts helping him do some research. But from Mido's apartment, he gets a phone call, and he's looking out the window and realizes that his captor is in the building across the street watching him. And he immediately runs over and confronts him. And sure enough, there they are, face to face.
Yep.
He doesn't recognize him, doesn't immediately know who this is, or it doesn't really explain anything. And his first thought is, I'm gonna beat the truth out of him. And his captor pulls back by saying he has a pacemaker and he has a device with a built-in trip switch on the pacemaker.
Yeah.
So if you try to torture me, I will just end myself, and you will never know.
Yeah, and it's one of the themes of the movie, because in my mind, I was like, do it, kill him now. I would have just killed him. I would have just been like, all right.
And that's a
Right.
different movie,
Yeah,
right?
That's
Death Wish, sure.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And that's what would have happened.
Yeah, I'll pull your teeth out. I'll just keep doing this. Yeah.
This has more layers to
It's
unpeel.
It's a lot more layered. Yeah, there's more to peel back. Because it's really one thing that they're going through in this movie is truth, and it's not just revenge. They're looking at, like, things we hold sacred as far as like truth and honor, and having our own prisons in our minds. That really, because if he kills him now and doesn't have the truth of what happened, he'll continue to be in that prison for the rest of his life. Like, he needs some kind of redemption. So there has to be some kind of redemptive element to his own sanity, because he just spent 15 years not having any sanity.
Yeah. And I think his captor knows this, and knows for that reason he's not going to kill him. Right. And he doesn't. So his captor gives him 5 days to figure it out, or says he will kill Mido. So Dae-Soo goes back across to Mido's apartment, where he finds the whole gang from the prison, and Mido is tied up, and they are abusing her. And the guy has a nice set of fake teeth now.
Yeah. He takes the card and puts it right in his pocket and says, "I know a good dentist." Yeah.
Keep this because you're going to need it. And he's got his own claw hammer. And when it looks like that's the path we're headed down, his phone rings, and the captor pays him off to not do this, which, it seems like they could have let him pull a few teeth and inflict some agony, and then end it, because who knows, they might have killed him. But the captor wants this game to continue on, right?
Yep.
So they leave. He unties Mido, and she's angry, saying, "Now do you trust me? Right? Now do you know that I'm not against you, that I'm with you?"
Right.
Because of what she just suffered because of being with him. So they pack up and they run off. They get in the car, and they're going to go somewhere safe. And they finally start to share some affectionate moments. They get to the hotel, and they actually do make love.
Yep.
So it's kind of a big linchpin moment.
Yeah.
And they think they're away, they're safe, they're out of this, and there's some hope and some happiness for a moment in his life. And then the room fills with smoke, and they're knocked out.
Yeah.
And a package is delivered.
Yeah.
And it turns out there was a bug in his shoe, and
He's been
They've
followed
been
the whole
tracking
time.
him and listening to him all along.
Yeah.
So everything he did, he's being followed. He's been listened to. He's being tracked.
Yeah.
The package gives him some clues as to who this individual was, and they track it back to Evergreen, which is a school Daesu attended as a youth. So that gives him a clue to start, digging into this. And he figures out his captor's name was Wu Jin, and he once went to the same school, but he still doesn't know exactly what happened.
Which is where the term old boy comes from. They were old boys.
Yes.
So they went to the same school back in the day, like, oh, we're old boys. We go back. Yeah.
Yes. He gets on the phone with Ju Huan, who starts telling him information about the time back there. And he tells him about Wu Jin's sister. And he's saying, oh, she was a real whore. And he's talking really, really bad about her. And of course, listening to him the entire time is Wu Jin, who we now know to be the captor. And he goes and murders Ju Huan because he can't listen to any more bad things being said about his sister.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, Daesu still doesn't know enough to know exactly what's going on. And when Wu Jin is killing Ju Huan, he just says, "My sister was no slut," and he just he just kills her. So Daesu starts to have flashbacks, and we see a scene with Daesu as a youth, and he is he's belligerent back then. He's smoking, he's disobeying rules, but he follows Wu Jin's sister up to a factory, and he's looking in the window, or an office building, some kind of structure.
Yeah, it looked like there was a broken window. It was kind of like an abandoned thing or something. Yeah.
And Wu Jin is inside taking pictures of his sister, and taking pictures turns into touching, turns into kiss, turns into real
ancestral stuff.
Yeah. And while she's there looking, she sees in the mirror, and she sees Wu Jin's reflection. Or excuse me, she sees Daesu's reflection.
And then he ducks down. Yeah.
He ducks down and disappears. So he then tells his friend the next day about what he saw, and then Daesu leaves town. He gets transferred and moved off to another school. So he's completely forgotten about any of this.
Mm-hmm.
But that word was spread, and that reputation was then tarnished. And he figures out who the guy, now he knows who the guy is, and he figures out where he lives. So he goes to meet him at his penthouse. He doesn't have the access code to ride up the elevator, but of course, Wu Jin and his main henchman enter the elevator with Daesu standing in the back, and Daesu just says, "You slept with your sister." Mm. So they go up the elevator to the penthouse, and the doors open, and there's a couple guards standing there, and Daesu immediately fights and takes them out. And Wu Jin is so oddly casual. He's just strolling through his penthouse with his pawns cut through the marble, and he, as he always does every time we see him there, he just immediately takes a shower and just starts walking around naked. He's got this
very flamboyant, very nonchalant and flamboyant, and just like whatever. Like, it's like you're in a dire situation. You're in a situation where this guy wants to murder you. You've tortured him, and you're just like, yeah.
I think it speaks to the feeling of control he has. He's been in control the whole way.
Yes.
And he doesn't, he isn't nervous. He has this really cool cube changing area that splits into 4 blocks. And then you can walk through the middle and select all your clothes, and then it recubes. It's pretty cool thing.
It has a futuristic,
I looked, I don't think I have room for one of those, but it's a cool concept.
What do you want for Christmas, Jerry? You're just like, well,
yeah.
Have you seen Oldboy?
So he gets out of the shower and he gets dressed, and he points with a light. He's pointing around the room, and he finally points to a gift box similar to the one that appeared in the hotel room. And Dae-Soo goes over, opens the box, and finds a photo album. And here's the great reveal of the whole movie. He starts looking through the photo album. He sees pictures of his family before he was incarcerated, and he starts to see pictures of his daughter as she grows up. And finally, he turns to find out that Mi-do, who he's been with, is his daughter, actually grown up years later.
Yeah.
And he flips.
Yeah.
I
fell out of my couch.
It was a shocking in a movie where there's all kinds of misdirection and nothing's what it seemed. You don't see this coming. And
one of the most misdirective movies I've ever seen. And I consider myself someone, I usually see it coming. I usually do. Like you kind of, if you're paying attention to movies, you often see it coming. I didn't see any of the stuff coming. I was just like, masterpiece.
If people saw this one coming, I would be shocked.
Yeah, I'd have to ask them what color the sky is to them, because I'd
but at this point, he just goes berserk. He's throwing himself into stuff. He's crashing all around. He's completely out of his mind.
Yeah, some of the most manic acting I've ever seen. Yeah.
It's something you can't. It's hard to fathom what that would be like, right? But he certainly he doesn't spare any emotion, and he alternates between threatening to rip them apart, eat them whole, bury, and then begging him to not take this any further.
Right.
Because what we find out is he had taken Mi-do back to the prison, made a deal with those guys to keep her safe while he pursued. And that was a setup. They have her, and they have a gift box similar to the one he just looked at that's going to tell her the truth. So he alternates between threats and violence and I'll do anything, begging. At one point, he licks his boots. Then he threatens him again, and then he begs again. And he finally, in his last act of attrition, cuts out his own tongue, which I don't quite get what that accomplishes if he doesn't want to ever speak of this, ever think of this.
Yeah, I think it's, I think that's what it was. I think it's one of those things where he's like, listen, I'll cut up my own tongue. I'll never say anything to anyone. Just please don't pursue this any further.
He says he'll be his dog. He'll be his pet. He'll,
starts wagging his tail and licking his boots and just sobbing all over the place. And at this point, you're just like, geez.
It's quite amazing.
It is.
After he cuts out his tongue, it finally seems to be enough to make Woo Jin say, "Okay, I've had enough. I've tortured you enough." And he calls the guards at the prison and tells them to not show the box to Mi-do and not tell her the truth. And then he turns and walks away, and he's starting to get on the elevator. And Dae-Soo picks up his pacemaker automatic control button or at least that's what he told him it was.
Right.
And it's not, but Dae-Soo thinks he's going to kill him on his way out the door. When in fact, when he hits the button, all it does is play audio through the entire penthouse of the recording of him having sex with his own daughter. This one final shot,
another stab in the heart. Yeah, just another, like, you're not getting out of this. Yeah,
like you thought you were tortured enough. Here's one more, and we're gonna get you.
Yeah. So I actually thought when he hit the button that it was gonna like give him a heart attack or like give Mi-do a heart attack. Like that threw me for a loop too. Like that was the whole movie. To the very end, everything about this movie is nothing but twists and turns. Then when you heard that going on, it like froze my brain for a second. I was like, wait, what? Like it starts playing that, so then your brain has to go back and start thinking about what his act of Wu Jin's actual revenge was, and it's a very, very thick plot. It's a very dense movie with a lot of layers and a lot of meaning. Every time you think it's gonna go in one direction, it goes in another direction. Because I was waiting for that thing to kill someone.
Right.
It never does.
All it did was one last
play recording.
slap in the face. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, there is one more twist. So as Wu Jin gets in the elevator, he flashes back to his sister's suicide, and he relives the whole thing. And he's standing over the bridge, and he's trying to talk her out of it, and he's got his hand out, and he's holding her, and he's trying to hold on, and she just wants to go. And when we watched it, my wife actually pointed this out, which was very subtle and very cool. But his last act with his hands, as she's falling out of his grip, is his trigger finger is the last thing to pull back in, and it blends perfectly.
Oh wow!
As it pulls back to live, he shoots himself in the head.
That's right.
The same trigger finger that he loses grip with his sister.
Yeah.
And he kills himself after
right
all
in
of
the
this.
Elevator. Yeah.
Like his whole point of living and being successful and making all this money was so that he could enact this revenge on Odesu.
And then you don't get to kill me. I kill myself. And then, right. Yeah. I go out on my own terms. I've just been waiting for this. And now you get to live with the torment of everything that's happened. Again, you're stuck in that prison, just the layer of prison.
So the final scene is, well, Odesu goes back to the hypnotist that had, and he finds out that the reason all this happened, he was hypnotized, the cell phone ringing made him pass out, and what he said made Mido fall in love with him. So they were both hypnotized to make all this come into action, which we were questioning. Some of it didn't make sense. Well, that's why, because they were both triggered to do these things, which was, another twist. But he convinces the hypnotist to make him forget this terrible secret, which is a morally ambiguous way to go about it, as well. Again, even though we've been following through this journey, he wasn't the best guy we ever met.
No.
So I keep going back and forth on his decision here.
Well, it's terrible because there's no path to redemption. He's basically saying, I want to split my personality into a part where I forget everything that happened, and let me just keep living the good part of my life. Like no lesson learned, right?
But that good part of your life is still what it is,
right?
And that's the morally challenging decision here,
right?
So she tells him she'll hypnotize him. He will split into two. A monstrous part of him will walk away and age a year with every step until he dies. And the man will remain and not know the terrible secret. So this happens out in a snowy field, and Mido comes out and he's alone. There are tracks walking away, even though this was a metaphorical splitting of the personality. And she hugs him and professes her love for him. And he smiles, and then his smile evolves into something more ambiguous,
a little bit more sinister. There's something else going on, and almost like a part of him still lived on. That part of him still lived on through him, and is now immediately regenerating. Like you can't escape it.
So you're saying, does he remember? Does he not remember?
Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't think you can escape that part of. I don't think it's possible. I think that's the point of that scene at the very end, and because they leave it, like you said, ambiguous for any direction for how you want to take it. But I don't think you can just separate yourself from the past like that. I don't think you can separate yourself from the core, from it's Carl Jung, the self. I don't think you can separate yourself from it.
Yeah, and the director says he left it ambiguous on purpose.
Yeah.
Some will choose to, and I don't even know that there is no happy ending. Some will choose to view it one way, some will choose to view it another, but
it's a
disturbing and twisted tale, but just a compelling and fantastic movie, highly recommended.
Absolutely. 10 out of 10. It's a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite films that Yeah, it's one of my favorite films.
And of course, as we tend to do, we had to have an American remake that just pretend doesn't exist. It
Yeah,
serves no purpose.
yeah, serves no purpose. No,
Yeah, it doesn't enhance any single thing and loses a lot of the grit and originality of the original. So
yeah, yeah. I don't even recognize it. I wouldn't recommend anyone watch it. I love Josh Brolin, and I appreciate that he was a fan of the film and whatever. But I don't. I'm all set.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just wasn't needed.
There's
That's
no
all.
point in recreating something that was done as a masterpiece. Like, what's the point?
Yep, I agree. Our next film we're going to talk about is Brawl in Cell Block 99, a 2017 film by S. Craig Zoller, his second film after Bone Tomahawk. And this film is a completely different animal than what we just talked about. What's your thoughts on this movie, Matt?
Again, I think it's a masterpiece. It's actually also I haven't heard anyone really talk about it, but it's a visual masterpiece. And I mean that like the entire set piece, I've noticed like this doesn't have anything to do with the narrative. I just think visually the movie is incredible. There's a lot of I noticed that there's a lot of blue, white, and black for when he's in like when Vince Vaughn's character is in the scene, and then when you contrast that with all of the people from the jails and the prisons, it's a lot of like yellow and browns, and they have this weird visual contrast like the entire movie. And it's not something, it's very subtle. It's not something that's obvious or something that's ever talked about, but it's part of the cinematography. I think that's just incredible because it creates this visual contrast that while you're watching it, you're not even thinking about it. So you have all of this stuff going on in the movie, and then you have this visual cinematography with the fight scenes and the color palettes that they did. I thought it was fantastic visually.
As you mentioned, Vince Vaughn stars in this as Bradley Thomas, who is a real departure for Vince Vaughn from what we've grown to know of him.
It's his best movie.
He's fantastic. He really is. He's shaved head. And he's got a cross in the whole back of his skull. He has an interesting. He's always stoic and calm.
Yeah.
With a simmering of violence beneath the surface.
Yeah.
He's a very unique character. We start with seeing him. We see him lose his job. He's laid off. He had even like his smart aleck remarks, which Vince Vaughn is known for.
Yeah.
One of his coworkers when he's leaving asks him how he's doing, if he's okay, and he says, "South of okay, north of cancer." And then yeah. It's not a wedding crashers kind of smart aleck remark.
Right.
It has some gravity to it and some
just
undertones
enough.
of angst.
Yeah. When he asked him to when he gets fired from his tow truck job, he asked him to come in the office. He was like, "Listen, I don't need to come. I work in a truck and I work in an office. I don't need to sit in an office to hear bad news."
Yeah.
And then he was like, "I don't care about the economy. Just tell me what's going on.
Give it to me straight.
Just give it to me straight." Yeah. And he's very quick-witted throughout the entire movie with a lot of little one-liners like that. And it's perfect for him as his role.
Yeah. So he's having a really bad day. He loses his job. He goes home early to find his wife sitting in the car. And she has a hickey on her neck. And he approaches her, and in the same, he takes her phone,
Yep.
snatches her purse away, looks at her phone,
yep.
and tells her to go inside. And then proceeds to dismantle her car by punching off windows, knocking out light. Like it's
just physically, just manhandling it, just punching everything. Yeah, taking the hood off, like physically with his hands and just throwing it.
And it demonstrates a couple things. He's not going berserk. It's a very calm and measured approach to this violence.
Yeah.
It continues that character building that he has of his stoicism, but also shows his strength and his ability to use his hands.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives you a little glimpse into who this guy is.
Yeah.
There's you talked about the cinematography. One thing I noted when he's done dismantling the car, he's standing. There's a shot of him when he's done. He's kind of just standing there collecting himself. and the view is from it's him standing next to this car he just destroyed.
Yeah.
And their house is kind of run down, and there's an American flag waving behind him. And to me, it's like the complete deconstruction of the American dream.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
he lost his job. He lost his, everything that you picture, the white picket fence. He just had the opposite thing going on,
Yeah.
but still
decimated.
Waves the flag proudly,
Yeah.
and and that comes up later in the movie too. It's
right.
It's
Yeah.
a beautiful scene. First time I saw it, I'm like, wow, it's just impressive to me. But
the entire cinematography of the film, I think, is highly underrated. But then again, I think the whole movie's underrated. But we'll go through it. But
yeah. So he goes inside and has a calm discussion with his wife. How long has it been going on? Do you love him? It's all very matter of factly. It's all very
composed. It's very
straight to the point.
Yeah.
And he tells a great little story about the cream.
Very Quentin Tarantino-esque type scene right here.
Yeah. It's a quick little tale, but it just and the story is that he goes in to get coffee every morning. There's 3 jugs. They're always pointing the other way. One's milk, one's skim, one's cream, and he always picks up the skim, even though he can't read the labels. And just out of chance, he should get the cream 1 out of 3 times. But in life, he doesn't get the cream.
Yeah.
And it's just a cool little tale.
Yeah, and he's like, luck's not going to get me the cream.
Right.
It's time for me to just do what I need to do. And it's time for me to change this course of action that I was on. Working this little job that I was doing and trying to do the right thing hasn't been working for me. I've been trying to be calm. I've been trying to be composed. I've been trying to be cool. And I'm not getting the cream.
Yeah.
And life's not going right.
So he decides to go work for a friend of his that he's apparently known for years,
Gil,
who was involved in the drug trade, and he basically is a mule for him. But his personality and his demeanor serve him very well in this role. He's all business. He does what has to be done. He's completely professional. He's completely reliable.
6'5".
And yeah. And you fast forward a year, and he's making a run. He's collecting money. He's driving a nicer car. He goes home to a really nice house. His wife is now pregnant, and their relationship is one, loving, joking, supporting. It's like different people.
Yeah, he walks in the house and he's like, he's concerned about her. She's pregnant. He's like, why are you cooking? You shouldn't be handling a knife like you're pregnant. Like he's very moral. He has this very moralistic attitude towards him. And it kind of shows in the beginning of the movie as well. But now it's like, now that he's kind of gotten his life on track as far like financially, you can kind of see like, okay, he's actually not a bad guy. Like
right.
He's really like, he's doing what he knows how to do to survive, but he's not trying to hurt anyone. He's not trying to be like, a thug or anything like that. He's just trying to do the what he can do to earn money for his family without hurting anyone and raise a kid and have a wife.
So they got the happy life going on. Everything's going really well. He gets a call from his boss, needs him to come over, meet up with a new supplier. So he does this. There's some little banter with his boss, and it's pretty clear how highly he's thought of and well respected he is by his boss. And he meets Elazar and his 2 henchmen, and they're going to go do a pickup. And he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't trust one of the guys. He says he looks like a user.
Yep.
And his boss Gil pulls him aside, and they negotiate. He needs you. I need you to do this for me. He negotiates 4 months off when his baby's born. So he agrees to do it, much against his personal compass of whether he should or not.
His instinct. Yeah. He's like, he even says that he was like, I'm not going to take the word of a stranger over my instinct. Like, I've been doing this for years. I look that guy in the eye. I don't trust him. So
exactly. Yeah. Well, so the pickup, they go out to a boat and go pick up a trunk of drugs buried somewhere in the bay. And as they come back, they start to realize this is a setup. They see a police presence, and he tells them to cut and run. And they don't. The two men go and engage the police in a big shootout. And you mentioned his morals. Rather than just leave and save himself, he decides to go on the side of the cops and shoots one of these guys and injures another one. Ends up, saving any cops from getting killed, but is arrested.
Yeah.
And,
see, I actually, when I see, I don't know. I don't know if it was that, or if he knew that if these guys died and he didn't, he would be in trouble anyways. Because I understand that the whole, I mean, they bring it up later when he gets arrested, like, but like it wasn't a moralistic thing he did, or was he like, okay, he's about to walk away. He has all the product and he's alive, and these two guys are dead. So if he goes back, aren't like the cartel going to come for him and be like, hey? So it was almost kind of like, you need to be caught up in this situation. So he was kind of thinking about his boss, like, well, I can't walk away from this. Like, I think it was more of a loyalty thing. I think maybe he was looking at the loyalty of the business he's in. Like, this is what I have to do. Like, I know I'm going to serve time, but it's because if I don't serve this time, I'm dead. Like, if I walk away from this cartel comes back and kills me. So I've got to go do what I got to do. And it's showing that he's loyal. He's loyal to Gil. He's loyal to everyone he sets up these relationships with. He's like, well, I've got to go show up and do what I have to do and serve this time. If I just walk away, they'll kill me.
Yeah, and that really comes through when he gets arrested, because he won't talk. He won't say nothing. He's like, I know what I did. Yep. I know what I did. You know, just take care of it.
Yep.
Very matter of fact, just like he's established.
Yeah, my boss will know what I did, and I'll be taken care of. And when I get out of here, when I get out of jail, I'll be fine.
Yeah, and he tells his wife, who's by the way is the great Jennifer Carpenter. I think she's magnificent.
Yep,
she's a really, really good actor, and I enjoy her in anything she does. Dexter, best known for Dexter's sister, but I think she's really, really good. That's his wife. He tells her, I don't want you to hearing, and I don't want you to visit me in prison, and I don't want you to bring our child to visit me. That's not how I want him to see me. Again, very matter of factly, let me just take care of this business and
let's get it done.
Be on our way. He gets sentenced to 7 years, even though they told him it's probably going to be 4 or 5.
Yep.
So that's right away kind of a slap. And
they throw the book at him.
He gets, sent to, they call it the box.
Yeah, it's like a minimum security, right? Yeah.
Oh, the fridge. Excuse me, not the box. They sent him to the fridge.
Yeah.
And then we get to walk him through orientation, so we get to see little glimpses of how everything works there, and the rules and the regulations. And quickly, one of the guards runs the prison boxing team and he looks at his stature and wants him to join the boxing team. And he says, I'm not interested in punching people for no reason. And then he says, well, what are all those muscles for? And he says, well, it helped me lift stuff. Yeah. Which is just a humorous line to me. Yeah.
Well, it's a foreshadowing too to his character, because what I love about this movie is they never tell you his history. They never tell you his previous past. They never tell you what he did, but they always kind of give you these little glimpses. Like, he almost has this aura that's like he has killed people. And he's like, hey, you want to box? He's like, no, man. Like they almost give this idea, is like, I've killed people with my bare hands. I have no interest in doing this.
Yeah.
This isn't some recreational thing where I'm going to cleanse myself from hitting a box and, punching bag. Like, I'm good.
Yeah, they hinted that. They hinted that he probably worked for Gil in the past.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of little drops, but no real history there.
Yeah. Just trying to serve my time and get out of here, man.
His second day, he gets visited by someone called the Placid Man, who's the actor Udo Kier, who, if you've seen him, you'd know him. He's always the creepiest guy in every movie.
I've seen him in movies. I didn't know his name.
He's always the creepiest guy in every movie.
Yeah.
He just has that look about him.
Perfect role.
And he shows him a video of his wife tied up and an abortionist who was brought in that specializes in removing limbs from within the womb. And he is told he has to kill a man in cell block 99 of a different prison, a guy named Christopher Bridge, and it's in Red Leaf maximum security. And he says, I'm not even in that prison. Not our problem.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, we will be mailing you the limbs.
Yeah.
So again, I love his demeanor through the whole movie. No matter what challenge is put before him, he just steps to it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unbelievable because the path he's led down is crazy.
Yeah, it's part of his character where he's just like, all right, who's next? Like he has no problem. It almost like it's always that backdrop of the character of like you can tell that he had this serious history where he was trying to suppress it and trying to be this normal family guy. And all of this stuff is just like bringing it up to a boil where it's like, okay, I can be this guy again. Like you guys have messed with the wrong person. And people will find out as we go through the movie.
Well, they find out right away because he figures, how do I get transferred from this level of security to a maximum security prison? The easiest way is on his very way back to his cell from this meeting. The guy who wants to box or wants him to box,
the security guard,
he engages him and they go at it, and they're throwing each other into the wall.
Great fight scene.
Oh my God, they're throwing haymakers. And again, it's not polished. It's not a Marvel fight scene.
Right.
It's raw. It's
the wide angle again. Yeah, we go right back to the wide angle again. And the fight scenes in this movie are incredible. Like they're some of the best I've ever seen. I love it. It goes right back to that grindhouse 70s, just hardcore. And it's done perfectly, and they have a lot of like the boxing and Wing Chun, and they make it street and gritty, and there's snapping of arms and legs and pipes, and it's one of the best. If you want to see good fight scenes, this is top of the list. It's one of my favorite.
And then speaking of snapping arms, that's what happens to that guard.
That's exactly
he
what
snaps
happens.
His arm straight back. Agonizing to watch.
Yeah, I love it. Watched it 7 times in a row, slow motion.
And then, of course, 4 more guards descend on him. He fights them. Finally they get him down, and they're leading him down to the hole. Well, on the way to the hole, he starts fighting them again. Knocks one into. He ends up putting 3 guards in the hospital. And lo and behold, he's being transferred to Redleaf. So again, it's just he had nothing against these individuals. He just had to do what he had to do. And being able to put that kind of focus on any task is impressive. So when he gets to Redleaf, they bring him over in a bus. The warden comes out, and it's Don Johnson at his scenery chewing best. He's got leather gloves on and a cigar in every single scene. And he dumps all of his stuff in the road, including his wedding ring. And there's
which he hones
guards.
In on. I love that when it goes clink, 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 it hits the ground. His eyes just hone in on it. And when I remember watching it, I was like, oh, don't look at it, because then the warden will see it.
He'll never see that again for sure. So there's armed guards, and they tell him, look, we don't put up with the kind of stuff you just did. And they bring him to a cell that has a non-working toilet that is just covered with human waste, and a bed for his 6'5" frame that sags in the middle.
It just goes right under.
It's to the point where he has to take his t-shirt off to cover his nose and mouth because the smell in the cell is so sickening.
He can't even eat in there. They try to give him food, and he's like, I can't eat in here. And they're like, well, all right, you're resistant to eat, so more trouble for you.
After a while, he gets let out to the yard for recreation. A guy comes out and approaches him, wants to be his friend, and he starts asking questions. Wants to know about cell block 99. Where are those guys? And he says those guys don't get to go to the yard. They're the rapists, the murderers, the child molesters, the psychopaths. You will never see them out in the yard. So he has to go deeper.
Well, and he gets up to go over them. He's like, where are you going? He's like, I'm one of the psychopaths. There's a gang and a group of guys in the corner working on weights. And he goes over and starts a fight. And he's hitting guys in the face with metal weights, and he's snapping arms. And fantastic fight scene.
It's just again,
it's one of those. It has weight. Like when he turns around and hits him with the pipe, with the sound effect and the way, like it's satisfying. It's up there with John Wick.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have the polish of John Wick.
Well, yeah, you don't see as many, like John Wick there's a lot of stuff in John Wick that there's a lot of quantity. Like you get to see him kill 30 people in a rope. Whereas like Cell Block, it's like it's 2 or 3 people, but it just has that quality to it. It has that weight.
It definitely has a realism to it, even though, you could question, again, these people are nothing but a means to an end for him.
Yeah.
He will go through anything to try to save his family. So after beating up inmates and, now he finally gets dragged to a room behind a bookcase, thrown down concrete stairs or cinder block stairs. And there's basically the foyer of this section of the prison is just a torture chamber.
Yeah.
There's just a wall with all kinds of stuff up. And they fit him with a shock belt that has a remote control. And when they hit it, it shocks his internal organs. He loses control. He falls to his knees. Looks very, very painful. And the warden tells him he's got 25 of these coming, and they will randomly be delivered when he's sleeping, eating, pissing, when he least expect it, he's going to get hit. And then they throw him in a cell that's covered in broken glass on the floor.
Yeah.
And immediately give him one more shot to send him to his knees into the glass.
Yeah. Just for fun.
So Cell Block 99 is
not where you want to be.
It wasn't an upgrade from his crap covered cell that he came from, but it's again what he needed to do. Day later, he is led to a large room where, lo and behold, Elazar and a group of his thugs are waiting, including Roman, the man he shot, but who did not die during the drug pickup. And the guards give Elazar the shock remote and let him, they basically are just torturing Bradley. They beat him up, and they're just going to keep beating him up every day.
Yeah.
It seems to be that's going to be their entertainment. So you're kind of in a hopeless situation, except he figures out a way to beat the system. He takes the rubber insoles out of his shoes. It took him a while to figure this out.
Yeah.
But he puts them inside, padding the shock receptors in the belt so that he doesn't feel the shock. So the next time the guards go to bring him out, he plays along. They hit the shock. He goes down like he's supposed to, but we know better. And when he's led into Elazar's room, he's completely first of all, so I skipped a part. First, he takes out the guards. Once they think he's down and incapacitated, he takes out those 2 guards, takes their shotgun, beats one to death. Eventually, he ends up with his head in the cell door, and he just slams it till he's done.
Yeah. Well, he only goes to shut it, and then he breaks his neck. He's like, "You idiot! Like, why did you try to put your head out?" Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And locks the other one in with the with his friend,
with his dead body. Yeah.
He takes off the stun belt and gives it to the inmate across the hall, who had told him at one point that the name he was supposed to find, he was supposed to get Christopher Bridge, that there was none in Cell Block 99 and never had been.
Yeah. So now we realize that it's all been a ruse.
Exactly. Well, now he goes into the room with Elazar and his thugs with no stun belt. So he goes in to meet the gang head on, and the first guy approaches him, and he beats the crap out of him, and in a not necessarily realistic but very grindhouse throwback scene, he with the man on the ground, he stomps his face straight into the concrete, and then drags it with his foot, and you see the whole man's body.
One of my favorite scenes. Loved it.
It's the physics of it, I don't know if they quite work, but
it worked for me when I was watching it. I was like, yeah.
it was amazing. The funny thing was the director's next film was called Dragged Across Concrete.
Yeah,
which I thought he thought of the title right then and there. But and the guy rolls over and his face is completely gone.
It's just all white skull. And that one guy in the back, the one tough guy in the back is like, oh, like even he's
yeah. Yeah. So he goes through fighting all the there's two more gang members in there with Elazar, and including Roman, and he kills both of those guys, and now it's just him and Elazar. And Elazar has the phone, and he's threatening to call and have the procedure done to his wife and unborn baby right then and there. And Bradley's only recourse is to continue to push this threat harder. And Elazar's like, I'm not going to give this up. I'm not going back, until he knocks him on the ground and takes his right leg and snaps it upwards.
Yes. Again, one of my favorite scenes.
Gives him a knee joint that goes the complete opposite direction as it's designed. And tells him he's going to drag him out to the prisoners in cell block 99, who will proceed to F him bloody, is how he describes it.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, Elazar finally relents, makes the call, and tells him the procedure is off and that they have to deliver his wife back to Gil. So at this point, he drags the body back into cell block 99, where the warden and a whole group of guards are waiting on the other side of a locked door. And he tells the warden, look, I'm waiting for a phone call. After that phone call, you give me 5 minutes and I will turn myself in. This doesn't have to get any messier than it is.
Yep.
So he goes, he takes him into the cell, and he waits. They bring his wife with the abortionist and the Placid Man. I can't ever think of his name.
Yeah.
The Placid Man brings the abortionist and his wife, and they drop her off to Gil. And they're slowly backing out of the driveway. And as they get a certain distance, Gil pulls a rifle out of the bushes and proceeds to shoot the Placid Man. The car crashes, and you see the abortionist get out the back.
He like tumbles out. He kind of falls out. He's kind of like crawling. Yeah.
And at this point,
Jennifer Garner, she takes the gun, doesn't she? She's like, no, let me take this shot.
Yeah, she takes it out of his hands, and she shoots the abortionist.
Yeah, which is perfect.
They make the phone call back to Bradley, say, I got her, she's safe. She gets on the phone with him. He doesn't tell her that this is their last phone call. He says he talks to the baby. Very, very tender and touching moment from where this family had gotten to before everything went
right back to his moralist character. Like it's just like no matter he went through all of this, but he still retained that moralist. Like he didn't want any of this.
Yeah.
He was trying to avoid this part of this encounter of the shadow of his character. He was trying to get rid of it and just be a family person. And you kind of it goes right back to that character in the beginning.
All this violence and killing and bone snapping was all.
It's not something he wanted to do, right? It's not something you want to do.
Yeah. So once he ends the conversation, he finally tells her he loves her, which usually when she says that he pulls a Han Solo and doesn't say it back, but he finally says it. He hangs up and he sticks Elazar's head down the shithole and proceeds to stomp on it until he's completely decapitated and his head rolls down the hole.
Tells the warden what he's doing. He's like, give me a minute. I'm taking his head off.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing.
Yeah. At this point, he turns around and now the warden and all the guards are in, and Don Johnson, Warden Suggs, proceeds to shoot him in the head, and it basically explodes side of his head right against the wall, and end a movie.
Yeah, and it's actually just like the end of a werewolf movie. It was just like the end of Werewolf in London. Like it's like shoot him and then it's over with. Like that's
yeah.
Kill the monster. Yeah,
tragic ending, but really, once the visit came from the Placid Man, and once he endeavored to start fighting guards and breaking arms and going down this path. There really was no other logical conclusion, unfortunately. I love the job Vince Vaughn did in this movie. I thought he played it perfectly. You know, the effects are a little grindhouse-ish, which gives it a charm.
Yeah. I like them.
You know, people watching it, maybe a younger crowd watching it might think, you know, I've seen better effects. But they're all practical. They're all real.
Yeah.
And it really throws me back to, you know, movies of my childhood, only, you know, amped up to 20.
Yeah. I don't think, I wish most movies would do this. Like, I think there's a time and place for CGI, and I mean, you'll hear me talk about this over and over and over again. So I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but I prefer those custom special effects over CGI. I like them. There's more grittiness to it. There's more real. I mean, we both know that, like, everyone knows the difference between CGI and it's not real, and those grindhouse special effects. Like, you can tell either way.
Sure.
You know, so it's like, but I appreciate the grindhouse, like blood squirting on someone's shirt type of thing, the fake bone snapping. Like, it's more entertaining.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we talked about this last week. I think it gives it an added weight and an added level of humanization. But you know, this to me was a very enjoyable movie. Well done, well acted, well shot. The cinematography. I really, really enjoyed it. I've seen it many times now, and it's one of my favorites. So
one of mine too.
So those were our two takes on prison horror.
Yeah.
Difficult category to pin down. There's a lot of directions you could go with this.
There's a lot. It's very, very Dante's Inferno. You know, just going through the 9 layers of hell that these individuals go through in the prison genre. You know.
But yeah, I think these two films that we selected offer a unique perspective, and glad to share them with you. And thanks for listening. Our topic next week is going to be home invasion, which is another category you can go a lot of different directions in. So I look forward to that.
Perfect for the holidays, Jerry.
Well, we'll get to holiday films. We're not quite there yet, but that's our show for this week. Thank you all for listening. Pleasure being here talking to you. This is the Weekly Horrorscope. I'm Jerry. That's Matt, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
See you next time. Thank you.
Your Weekly Horrorscope with Jerry and Matt.